Hyun stood up slowly. Her old bones made small sounds as she moved. But when she spoke, her voice was strong and clear. "This council must now decide," she said. "We have heard Ambassador Jiho's testimony. We have seen the evidence. We know what humans did and why they did it. Now we must choose how to respond." She looked around the room at all the different beings. The facts are clear. The Voskan Empire attacked humanity without cause. They destroyed a human colony. They killed 2 million civilians. They declared a war of extermination. These actions violated every law this council holds sacred. HFY started to speak, but Hyun held up her hand. "I am not finished, Counselor. The Voskan Empire broke our laws first. They started this war, but humanity's response also broke our laws. They used forbidden technology. They deployed weapons that were banned thousands of years ago, weapons that every civilized species has agreed are too dangerous to exist." She paused and looked at Jiho. "Both sides have done wrong, but the consequences are not equal. The Voskans started with murder and genocide. The humans responded with survival. The question before us is this: how do we maintain peace and law when both have been broken?" Nari flickered brightly. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "There is another question," she said. "Every species here now knows what humans can do. We know they have neural enhancements that make them better than any pilot in the galaxy. We know they have weapons that can destroy entire fleets from the inside. What is to stop them from using these advantages against us?" Murmurs spread through the room. Many beings nodded or made sounds of agreement. The fear was real. Humanity had shown its teeth. Now everyone was worried they might be the next target. Jiho stepped forward. He kept his hands where everyone could see them. His body language was open and honest. "Counselor Nari raises a fair concern," he said. "Let me be very clear about humanity's position. We do not want war. We never wanted war. We joined this council 80 years ago because we believed in cooperation, in mutual benefit, in peace, but we will not be helpless. We will not disarm ourselves and hope that others will be kind. The galaxy is dangerous. There are species like the Voskans who see weakness as an invitation to attack. We refuse to be weak." Mira leaned forward. Her blue skin was glowing with thought. "What are you proposing, Ambassador? That humans keep their forbidden weapons? That they continue to enhance their soldiers with machines? This council cannot allow that. It would set a precedent. Every other species would rush to develop similar technologies. The arms race that followed would destroy us all." Jiho nodded. He had expected this argument. "You are right, Counselor. An arms race benefits no one. So let me offer a compromise, a way forward that protects both humanity and the Council." He pulled up new information on the holographic display, a detailed proposal with many sections and clauses. First, humanity will submit to inspection protocols. Not full disarmament, but transparency. We will allow Council observers to verify that our nanomachine technology remains under strict control. We will prove that it cannot be used accidentally or stolen. Second, we will agree not to use self-replicating weapons except in cases of existential threat. An attack like the one the Voskans launched. An attempt to exterminate us. Only then will we deploy Project Jamin. Third, we will share some of our defensive technologies with the Council. Not the weapons, but the defensive systems. Ways to detect nanomachine infiltration. Ways to protect against neural interface hacking. We will help other species defend themselves. The council members looked at each other. This was unexpected. Humans were offering to give away their technological advantages. Or at least some of them. Daeun spoke up. Her crystal body was flashing yellow, which meant she was thinking hard. "What do you want in return?" she asked. Jiho smiled slightly. "Several things. First, the council must formally condemn the Voskan Empire for their unprovoked attack. Make it clear that what they did was wrong and illegal. Second, the Voskan military must be reduced, cut in half. They have proven they cannot be trusted with such a large fleet, and they must pay compensation to the families who lost loved ones at New Sol. Third, and most important, any future attack on humanity will be treated as an attack on the entire council. If someone declares war on us again, the full weight of this council will respond. We want protection under council law." HFY jumped to his feet. His whole body was shaking with rage. "This is outrageous. You want us to reduce our military? Pay money to humans? Accept punishment for defending our territory?" Hyun turned to face him. Her eyes were cold. "It was not your territory, Counselor. That planet was legally granted to humanity by this very council. You know this. Everyone here knows this. You attacked them because you wanted their land, because you thought they were too weak to stop you. You were wrong. She looked around the room. Let me be frank with all of you. The Voskan Empire committed an act of genocide. They murdered civilians. They declared war with the intent to exterminate an entire species. Under our laws, humanity would have been justified in asking for military intervention from the entire council. They could have demanded we all go to war against the Voskans, and they did not do that. Instead, they fought back on their own. Yes, they used forbidden weapons, but they used them defensively. They used them to survive. And now they are offering to submit to oversight and share their technology in exchange for protection under our laws. Borum stood up. Her hive-mind body moved as one. The chair is correct, she said. The humans' proposal is reasonable. More than reasonable. They are offering more than they need to. Minho nodded his plant-like head. I agree. The Voskans must face consequences for their actions, and humanity must be brought fully under council law, but with protections, with guarantees that this will not happen again. More and more council members voiced their agreement. Not all of them. The Voskans and their allies remained silent and angry, but the majority was clear. Hyun raised her hand for silence. We will vote, she declared. All those in favor of Ambassador Jiho's proposal signal now. Around the room, hands rose. Appendages lifted. Lights flashed. Colors changed. Each species had its own way of voting yes. Jiho watched as the votes added up. His face remained calm, but his heart was beating fast. Finally, Hyun counted the votes. The motion carries with 41 votes in favor, 3 against, and 3 abstentions. The proposal is accepted. She turned to Jiho. Humanity will remain a member of this council. You will submit to the inspection protocols you have outlined. You will not use self-replicating weapons except in defense against existential threats. You will share defensive technologies as promised. Then she turned to Thexfar. The Voskan Empire is hereby formally condemned for unprovoked aggression and attempted genocide. Your military fleet will be reduced by 50%. You will pay reparations to the victims of New Sol, and you will face collective action from this entire council if you ever attack a member species again. Thexavar said nothing. He simply sat down. His shell had lost its dark color. Now it looked gray and dull. Defeated, Hyun hit her desk one final time. This session is adjourned. Let the record show that justice has been served today, both to those who started a war and to those who survived it. As the council members began to leave, everyone knew that the galaxy had changed. Humans had proven they were not to be underestimated, and that lesson would not be forgotten. The council room was still full of noise. Everyone was talking about what Jiho had just said. Hyun hit her hand on the desk 3 times. The loud sound made everyone stop talking. We need order, Hyun said firmly. She looked tired, but her voice was strong. Ambassador Jiho, you must tell us everything. The whole story. Every detail. This council needs to understand how humans defeated the Voskan Empire. Jiho nodded. He pressed more buttons on his wrist. New pictures appeared in the air. These pictures showed the inside of human heads. Everyone could see small metal pieces connected to the brain, thin wires that went into different parts of the mind. This is what we call a neural interface, Jiho explained. Every human pilot who fights in space has one. The metal pieces connect to their brain. The wires carry information very fast, faster than normal nerves can. He changed the picture to show a young woman in a pilot suit. She had short black hair and a confident smile. This is Captain Yuna, Jiho said. She was one of the pilots at the first battle. The battle at Busan System. She destroyed 17 Voskan cruisers by herself. Thexfar made an angry sound. 17. One pilot killed 17 of our ships? That is impossible. Our cruisers have the best shields, the best armor. They were built to survive anything. They were built to survive normal attacks, Jiho said. But Yuna is not normal. None of our pilots are. When Yuna flies her ship, she does not just use her eyes and hands. Her brain is connected directly to the ship's computer. She can see in every direction at once. She can track 100 targets at the same time. She can calculate the perfect shot in less than 1 second. Mira was watching the pictures with great interest. Her blue skin glowed brighter when she was curious. You have become one with your machines, she said quietly. Your pilots are not just humans anymore. They are something between human and computer. Yes, Jiho agreed. We call them enhanced pilots. The computer helps them, but it does not control them. Yuna still makes every choice. She still decides where to fly and when to shoot. The computer just helps her do it faster and better. He showed another picture. This one showed the battle in detail. The human ships moving like dancers. Every movement perfect. Every shot hitting its target. The first Voskan fleet arrived at Busan expecting an easy fight, Jiho continued. They had 100 ships. We had only 12. Admiral Suho commanded our fleet. He is one of our best commanders. He knew we could not win by fighting normally, so he did not fight normally. The picture showed the Busan system. It had many asteroids floating in space. Big rocks and small rocks. Some were as large as mountains. Others were just pebbles. Admiral Suho used the asteroids, Jiho said. He split our 12 ships into 3 groups. Each group flew into the asteroid field. The Voskan ships followed them. Daeun was watching closely. Her crystal body flashed different colors as she thought. That should have been suicide, she said. Flying through asteroid fields at combat speed is impossible. The ships would crash. The pilots would die. For normal pilots, yes, Jiho said. But our pilots are enhanced. Their brains work with quantum computers. These computers can predict where every asteroid will be. They can calculate safe paths through spaces that look impossible, and they can do this millions of times per second. The picture showed what happened next. The human ships flew through the asteroids like they were dancing. They twisted and turned. They flew upside down and sideways. They moved in ways that should have killed everyone inside, but the Voskan ships could not follow. They were too big, too slow. When they tried to enter the asteroid field, they crashed into rocks. Their shields broke. Their hulls cracked open. Air rushed out into space. The Voskan fleet commander realized his mistake, Jiho said. He tried to pull back, but it was too late. Our ships came out of the asteroids from different directions. We surrounded them, and then we attacked. The picture showed human ships firing at the Voskan fleet. Every shot was perfect. They aimed at the engines, at the weapon systems, at the command centers. The Voskan ships tried to fight back, but they were confused. They did not know which way to shoot. It took 47 minutes, Jiho said quietly. 47 minutes to destroy 100 Voskan warships. We lost 3 ships. The Voskans lost everything. The council room was silent. No one made a sound. They all stared at the pictures. Some looked scared. Others looked amazed. A few looked angry. A being that looked like a giant plant spoke. His name was Minho. His voice sounded like wind through leaves. You said 3 fleets, Minho said. What happened to the other 2? Jiho changed the pictures again. Now they showed 2 more star systems. 2 more battles. 2 more human victories. The 2nd fleet attacked our colony at Gwangju. The 3rd fleet went to Incheon. Both times we used the same tactics. We used our enhanced pilots. We used the terrain. We used speed and precision, and both times we won. Thexavar stood up. His whole body was shaking with rage. You are monsters, he shouted. You have turned yourselves into machines. You have given up what makes you alive. You are not natural anymore. Jiho turned to face him. For the first time, real anger showed on his face. Natural? Jiho said. His voice was cold. You want to talk about natural? Your empire uses genetic engineering to make stronger soldiers. You grow your warriors in tanks. You make them bigger and meaner than normal Voskans. Do not talk to me about natural. Thexvar started to speak, but Jiho kept talking. Every species in this room has changed themselves. Some use technology. Some use biology. Some use chemistry. We all do what we must to survive. Humans chose to enhance our minds. We chose to work with computers. That is our way. Hyeon nodded slowly. She understood what Jiho was saying. But there is more, she said. I can see it in your eyes, Ambassador. The neural enhancements explain how your pilots could fly so well, but they do not explain everything. 300 Voskan ships should have eventually won through sheer numbers. What else did you use? Jiho went very still. For a moment he did not speak. The room waited. Finally he pressed another button. New information appeared in the air. The words were marked as top secret. The highest level of security clearance. Several beings in the council gasped when they saw the classification level. There is one more thing, Jiho said quietly. One more weapon we used. We call it Project Jaemin. The room erupted in whispers. Project Jaemin. The name meant nothing to most of them. But a few beings knew. A few beings understood. And the look on their faces was pure horror. Mira leaned back in her seat. Her blue skin had turned almost white. No, she whispered. You did not. Tell me you did not. Jiho looked at her. His face showed sadness and determination together. We did, he said. We had no choice. When the Voskins vowed to exterminate us, when they promised to hunt down every human in space, we made a decision. We used the weapon we hoped we would never need. Hyun stood up. Her old face was very serious. Explain Project Gemin, she commanded. Now. The council must know everything. Jiho took a deep breath and began to tell them about the weapon that had destroyed 3 Voskin fleets from the inside out. The palace floated above the gas giant like a crystal dream. Inside its walls, light became solid and gravity bent to the will of those who ruled. The Velorans had built this wonder, a species with shimmering skin and 4 arms who had conquered 17 star systems. They were powerful, ancient, and they ruled everything. Daehyun walked through the royal garden with a cleaning cloth in his hands. He was 34 years old, a human who had served in this palace for 12 long years. His hands were rough from work, his face lined with quiet sadness. He cleaned the glowing stones and tended the impossible plants that grew under artificial suns. This was his life now, far from Earth, far from everything he had once loved. The garden held fruits from 1,000 different worlds. Some glowed in the dark. Others sang soft songs when the wind touched them. Daehyun knew them all. He watered them, pruned them, and made sure they thrived. The Velorans barely noticed him. To them, humans were useful servants, nothing more. They were clever animals who could do simple tasks. On this day, as Daehyun polished a stone that pulsed with inner light, he heard something that made him stop. It was the sound of crying. Not the quiet sniffling of an adult trying to hide tears, but the broken sobbing of a child who had forgotten how to stop. He looked up and saw the young prince sitting alone among the luminescent flowers. Prince Kelter was only 5 years old by Veloran counting, roughly the age of a human toddler. His skin shimmered like oil on water and tears ran down his small face. Daehyun had never seen a Veloran child cry like this. These proud aliens rarely showed such raw emotion. The prince clutched his stomach and rocked back and forth. His small body shook with each sob. Daehyun should have walked away. He should have called the royal caretakers. He should have minded his own business. But something in that crying pulled at him, reached into a place in his heart that still hurt after all these years. He approached slowly, the way one might approach a frightened animal. The prince looked up at him with eyes too large for his face, filled with pain and confusion. Through broken words and hand gestures, the child tried to explain. He was hungry, but he did not want the nutrient solutions that his caretakers offered. He wanted something real, something his father used to give him before the assassination 3 months ago. Daehyun understood. The prince wanted a memoria fruit. These golden fruits grew only once per cycle in the royal garden. They were sacred, reserved only for the queen herself. The fruits held memories, they said, and tasted like happiness. To take one meant death. The law was absolute and without mercy, but the child was suffering. Daehyun looked at those tear-filled eyes and saw another face from long ago. He saw his own daughter, Soyeon, who had died when she was 6 years old. He remembered how she used to cry when she was hungry. Back on Earth, back when a plague swept through the lower cities while the rich fled to their orbital stations. He remembered holding her as she grew weaker, unable to help, unable to save her. His hands moved before his mind could stop them. He walked to the memoria tree and reached up. The golden fruit hung from a silver branch, its skin pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns. It was warm to the touch, alive in a way that made his breath catch. He plucked it carefully and turned back to the prince. Daehyun knelt before the small alien child. He held the fruit with both hands, offering it as one might offer something holy. His heart pounded. He knew what he had done. He knew what would happen when they discovered his crime. But in this moment, all that mattered was the crying child in front of him. The prince reached out with trembling hands and took the fruit. He bit into it and juice ran down his chin. For the first time since his father's death, the crying stopped. The prince ate slowly, savoring each bite, and something like peace settled over his small face. What Daehyun did not know was that someone was watching. High above in her meditation chamber, Queen Niravel sat with her consciousness extended throughout the entire palace. She could read surface thoughts. She could see through walls. She saw everything that happened in her domain. She watched the humans steal the sacred fruit. She saw into his mind and felt the memory of his dead daughter. She felt the desperate love that made him risk his life for another being's child. Even an alien child, even the child of his masters. She saw the purity of that choice, untainted by hope for reward or fear of consequence. The queen should have called her guards. The law demanded it, but instead she sat very still and whispered to herself in her ancient language. The words meant, "Forgive him." She did not intervene. Not yet. She wanted to see what would happen next. She wanted to understand these humans better. These strange creatures who served her people but remained mysterious despite centuries of contact. Suddenly, alarms screamed through the palace, but they were not for Daehyun's theft. Someone had breached the northern wing. Assassins had returned, the same ones who had killed the king 3 months ago. They had come to finish what they started. They had come for the prince. Guards rushed past the garden, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Servants screamed and ran for shelter. Chaos erupted like a storm breaking over calm water. Daehyun did not think. He grabbed the prince and pulled him behind a large stone planter. He wrapped his arms around the small body and held tight. The prince clung to him, his small hands gripping Daehyun's shirt. The child was terrified, his empathic powers broadcasting fear like a radio signal that every sensitive mind in the palace could feel. But Daehyun felt it too. He felt the crushing wave of telepathic terror that the prince was accidentally sending out. It should have broken his mind. He was not trained to resist such things. He was just a human custodian. Yet somehow he weathered it. He absorbed that fear and whispered soft words of comfort. The prince's powers slowly calmed. His breathing steadied. He felt safe in the arms of this human who had given him fruit and now protected him from danger. The battle ended quickly. The royal guards were well trained. 3 of them died, but the assassins were killed or captured. Security Chief Velkoth, a traditionalist Velaran with silver-streaked skin, immediately began a full investigation. Every corner of the palace would be searched. Every recording would be reviewed. Every person would be questioned. Daehyun carried the prince back to the royal chambers and handed him over to the caretakers. Then he walked slowly to his small quarters in the servants' wing. His hands shook as he closed the door behind him. He sat on his narrow bed and stared at his palms. He had stolen sacred fruit. He had broken the most serious law. The security footage would show everything. By morning they would come for him. By afternoon he would probably be dead, but when he closed his eyes he did not see his own death. He saw the prince's face when the crying stopped. He saw that moment of peace, and he knew with absolute certainty that he would make the same choice again. In her meditation chamber, Queen Niravel watched the human sit alone in his room. She watched him accept his fate with quiet dignity, and she began to wonder if her people had been wrong about humans all along. Perhaps there was more to them than anyone had suspected. Perhaps this simple act of compassion was the most complex thing she had witnessed in her 3 centuries of life. She whispered again, softer this time, "Forgive him." But now she realized something important. This human needed no forgiveness. He had done nothing wrong. He had simply done what any decent being should do when faced with a suffering child. The question was not whether to punish him. The question was what her people might learn if she chose a different path. The queen sat in the darkness and thought about futures that might branch from this single stolen fruit, this single act of kindness across the species divide. Tomorrow would bring consequences. But tonight a human slept knowing he had done the right thing, and a prince slept peacefully for the first time in months, and a queen questioned everything she thought she knew about power, law, and the true measure of civilization. 6 months had passed since Daehyun became the prince's attendant. The changes in the palace continued, small but steady. Humans now received better food. They had 1 day of rest each week. Medical care improved dramatically. Even the guards treated them with slightly more respect. The queen presented these as efficiency improvements, but everyone understood the truth. Prince Kael'tir had influenced his mother. The child's growing compassion was reshaping the palace, one small reform at a time. But not everyone welcomed these changes. In the shadows of power, those who believed in the old ways grew more concerned. They met in secret in rooms shielded from the queen's telepathic reach. Security Chief Velkoth led these meetings. Beside him sat Commander Thelvis, a military leader who had served under the late king. She believed Valoran superiority was not cultural, but biological. Humans were meant to serve, nothing more. Scholar Rinmoth joined them, an old academic who had studied dozens of lesser species. He argued that showing kindness to humans was like giving dangerous tools to children. It would only lead to problems. The prince is 8 years old, Velkoth said, his voice tight with controlled anger. At this age, his character is being formed. Every day with that human pushes him further from proper Valoran values. Thelvis nodded sharply. He speaks out of turn. He questions military decisions. He even suggested we negotiate with the Krith rather than prepare for war. This is weakness, we must act, Rinmoth agreed. But carefully. The queen indulges her son's attachment to the human. We cannot simply remove Daehyun without her permission. Velkoth's eyes glinted with cold intelligence. Then we create a situation where she has no choice. We prove that humans cannot be trusted. We frame the human for attempting to harm the prince. The plan formed over several secret meetings. They would use a slow-acting poison, one that would take hours to show symptoms. It would be placed in the prince's morning juice. Evidence would be planted in Daehyun's quarters showing he obtained the poison. When the prince fell ill and the evidence was discovered, even the queen's mercy would have limits. The human would be executed. The prince would learn that his trust was misplaced, and the reforms would end. The Festival of Ascension is in 3 days, Velkoth said. The palace will be full of visitors. Security will be complex. It's the perfect time, the conspirators agreed. They would act during the festival. But they had not counted on human intuition, or on a child's love. Hana worked in the palace's engineering section, maintaining the sophisticated systems that kept the floating structure operational. She was good at her job, clever and curious. Those traits served her well when she accidentally intercepted an encrypted message. She couldn't decode all of it, but she recognized Velkoth's personal cipher. The message mentioned the human custodian and removal protocol and Festival of Ascension. It was enough to make her blood run cold. She found Jiwon and Taeyang immediately, pulling them into a storage room where they could talk privately. Something's happening, she whispered, her voice urgent. Something involving Daehyun. I think they're planning to hurt him. Jiwon's face went pale. Are you certain? Not completely, Hana admitted, but certain enough to be terrified. Taeyang paced the small room. If we warn Daehyun and we're wrong, we'll look paranoid. If we go to the queen with no proof, she might think we're making trouble. But if we stay silent and something happens, they argued in fierce whispers torn between action and caution. None of them noticed young Minji standing in the doorway listening with wide eyes. The 7-year-old girl understood enough to know her friend Daehyun was in danger. She slipped away before the adults noticed and did what children do when they're scared. She went to someone she trusted. She went to Prince Kael'tir. The prince was in his study working on language lessons when Minji knocked on his door. She had never visited his chambers before. Servants' children did not approach royalty uninvited, but the prince saw her frightened face and immediately put down his books. Minji, what's wrong? The words tumbled out of her in a rush. Adults were talking about Daehyun being in danger. Something bad was going to happen at the festival. She didn't understand all of it, but she knew it was serious. The prince listened with growing alarm. His empathic abilities, now better controlled, picked up the genuine fear in the child's emotions. She wasn't lying or confused. She had heard something real. A wise child would have gone to his mother immediately. But the prince was still young, still wanting to prove himself. He decided he would protect Daehyun himself. He began sleeping with a small ceremonial blade under his pillow. He insisted that Daehyun taste all his food first, reversing the usual protocol. He asked constant questions about who entered his chambers and why. Daehyun noticed the change in the prince's behavior. The boy seemed anxious, jumpy, constantly looking over his shoulder. Daehyun assumed the child was having nightmares about his father's assassination. He tried to comfort him, never suspecting he himself was the source of the prince's worry. The Festival of Ascension arrived with great ceremony. The palace opened to nobles from across the empire. Thousands of visitors filled the halls. Guards were everywhere, but so were strangers. In the organized chaos, a conspiracy could move unseen. Velkoth's plan proceeded with precision. The poison was obtained, a substance that would cause illness hours after consumption. It would look like natural causes at first, buying time to plant evidence before anyone suspected foul play. The conspirators placed the poison in the special juice the prince drank every morning, a blend of fruits prepared specifically for him. They planted a vial in Daehyun's quarters, coating it with his fingerprints while he slept. Everything was ready. By midday, the prince would be ill. By evening, evidence would point to the human. By nightfall, Daehyun would be in custody. By morning, he would be executed and the reforms would be over. But they had not accounted for one thing. Daehyun had been a custodian for 12 years. He knew the palace better than most Velerans who lived there. He understood its rhythms, its patterns, its normal flow. On the morning of the festival, small things felt wrong. A door that should be locked stood slightly open. A guard stationed in an unusual position. A strange chemical smell in the preparation room where the prince's food was made. Individually, these details meant nothing. Together, they created a feeling Daehyun couldn't ignore. Something was off. Something was dangerous. When he was asked to bring the prince his morning juice, Daehyun paused. He looked at the cup, studied it carefully. It appeared perfect. It smelled normal. But that feeling in his gut, that human instinct for pattern recognition, screamed at him. He made a choice that would seem either paranoid or brilliant. When no one was looking, he poured the juice into a large decorative plant in the corridor. He refilled the cup with pure water from a fountain and brought that to the prince instead. The prince complained that his juice tasted boring. Daehyun apologized and promised something better tomorrow. The child drank the water and went about his day. 3 hours later, Hana was walking past that corridor and noticed something strange. The decorative plant, which had been lush and green that morning, was dying. Its leaves had turned black. Its stems were withering. She stopped and stared at it, her engineer's mind working through possibilities. Plants didn't die that quickly from natural causes. Something had poisoned it, but what? Then she remembered the juice. The prince's morning juice. She ran to find Daehyun. She found him in the gardens with the prince, both of them folding paper into shapes. She pulled Daehyun aside, her voice urgent. That plant in the north corridor. It's dying. What happened to it? Daehyun's face went still. I poured the prince's juice into it this morning. Something felt wrong, so I gave him water instead. Hana grabbed his arm. We need to tell the queen now. But before they could move, Security Chief Velkoth appeared with 4 guards. His face showed satisfaction and something darker. Daehyun, you are under arrest for possession of illegal substances with intent to harm the royal heir. What? Daehyun stared at him in confusion. A search of your quarters revealed poison. Velkoth continued. You will be detained while we investigate. The prince stepped forward, his young voice sharp. He saved my life. He didn't poison anything. With respect, Your Highness, you are too young to understand, Velkoth said smoothly. Guards, take him. But at that moment the queen herself appeared. Her presence was like a wave of cold power washing over everyone. She had been monitoring the situation since Minji's warning reached her through her own intelligence network days ago. Release him, the queen commanded. Velkoth's confidence faltered. Your Majesty, the evidence— I know about your evidence, the queen interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. I also know about your conspiracy. Show me your mind, Security Chief. It was not a request. The queen's consciousness slammed into Velkoth's thoughts, bypassing his defenses. She ripped through his memories and found everything. The meetings, the plans, the poison, the willingness to harm her son to prove a political point. She pulled back, her face terrible with rage. Commander Thelvas and Scholar Rinmuth will join you in custody. Your conspiracy to harm the heir is treason of the highest order. Velkoth tried one last desperate argument. Your Majesty, can you not see? 10 years passed like water flowing downstream, changing everything slowly but surely. Prince Kael'thir had grown into a young leader, 15 years old by Valoran counting. He stood tall now, with his mother's wisdom in his eyes and something else too. Something his tutors couldn't quite name but everyone recognized. It was a quality he had learned from a human custodian who once stole a fruit to comfort a crying child. Daehyun was older now, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes. But he still served the prince, though his title had changed. He was no longer a custodian or even an attendant. He was ambassador of human affairs, a position that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. In public, he maintained proper formality. In private, the young king still called him by his first name. The Valoran Empire had transformed in ways that amazed those who remembered the old days. Humans now served in positions of real authority. They worked as scientists, military officers, and diplomats. A woman named Bowman, brilliant and determined, sat on the Royal Council as the first human representative in history. Not everyone celebrated these changes. Traditionalists still whispered that the empire was weakening, that humans were rising above their proper station. But the evidence spoke differently. Human intuition combined with Valoran technology created innovations neither species had achieved alone. Trade routes became more efficient. Scientific discoveries came faster. Even the military, initially resistant, admitted that human strategic thinking added unpredictable elements that confused enemy projections. Then came the war with the Krith Dominion. The Krith had watched Valoran reforms with contempt. They saw compassion as weakness and diversity as chaos. They launched a surprise invasion of border systems, striking with overwhelming force. The Valoran fleet, commanded by traditional tacticians, suffered devastating early defeats. The Krith fought with suicidal bravery and overwhelming numbers, strategies that Valoran telepaths struggled to counter because they seemed illogical to Valoran thinking. But they weren't illogical to humans, who had their own long history of warfare. Taeyang, the shuttle pilot who had once brought news to secret meetings in the garden, had risen through the military ranks. His unconventional tactics had caught the attention of fleet commanders. Now in desperation, they gave him emergency command of a defense fleet facing impossible odds. Admiral Taeyang studied human military history and found strategies that seemed insane to Valoran logic. He implemented feints and false retreats. He used psychological warfare designed to confuse rather than overwhelm. He coordinated with Valoran admirals, combining their superior technology with human unpredictability. At the Battle of Kyressa Station, Taeyang's fleet faced a Krith force 3 times their size. By all reasonable calculation, they should have been destroyed. But Taeyang did something the Krith couldn't anticipate. He broadcast a surrender signal, luring the enemy into close range. The Krith, believing victory was assured, pressed forward eagerly. Then Taeyang detonated cargo ships filled with experimental weapons designed by Hana, who had become chief of special projects for weapons development. Humans had a phrase for this tactic: playing dead to catch prey off guard. The Krith had no experience with such deception. Half their fleet was destroyed in the blast. The war turned. Within 6 months, the Krith sued for peace, shocked by an enemy that thought in ways their strategists couldn't predict. While the war raged, Prince Kyle Tyr prepared for his future. His mother, Queen Niravel, had ruled for over 4 centuries. She was tired in ways that even her long-lived species felt. She began discussing succession with her son. One evening, the prince came to Daehyun with uncertainty in his eyes. They sat in the same garden where everything had begun a decade ago. The Memoria fruit tree still grew there, producing its golden fruit once per cycle. "I'm not ready to be king," the prince said quietly. Daehyun, now in his late 40s, smiled with understanding. "Nobody ever is truly ready." "But I need to be better than ready," the prince insisted. "My people expect perfection. They expect strength and certainty. They expect a leader who never doubts." Daehyun was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "What if you gave them something different? What if you gave them honesty instead?" The prince looked confused. Valoran rulers were supposed to project absolute confidence. Their telepathic abilities meant they could sense doubt, so showing none was considered essential. "What if," Daehyun continued, "you became a king who admits when he doesn't know something, who asks for help, who shows that strength isn't about never falling, but about getting back up?" It was a radical idea. It was also very human. The prince thought about this for a long time. That would be different from any Valoran ruler in history. "Maybe that's exactly what your people need," Daehyun suggested gently. Months later, Queen Niravel officially abdicated. The coronation ceremony filled the palace with representatives from across the galaxy. Earth's reformed government sent delegates. So did a dozen other species who had joined the Valoran alliance. Jiwan, the medical technician who had once worried about survival, now spoke for humanity and galactic affairs. His daughter Minji, now 17, stood beside him as his aide. She was the first human trained in Valoran telepathic resistance techniques, a skill that would have been forbidden in the old empire. King Kael'tir's coronation speech became legendary. He spoke in both Valoran and English, honoring both species that had shaped him. His words were honest in a way that shocked many Valorans and moved everyone else. "I am young," he said, his voice carrying through the vast hall. "I will make mistakes, but I promise to learn from them. I promise to listen, not just with telepathy, but with the kind of understanding my friend Daehyun taught me long ago. Compassion." He paused, looking out at the assembled leaders of worlds. "My father ruled with strength. My mother ruled with wisdom. I hope to rule with both. But I also want to rule with something we almost lost: the recognition that every being, regardless of species or station, has worth." Then he said words that would be remembered for generations. 10 years ago, a human risked his life to ease a child's hunger. My mother saw that act and whispered, "Forgive him." But there was nothing to forgive. That human showed me what leadership truly means. Seeing suffering and choosing to act even when it costs everything. "This is my promise to you all," the young king continued. "In my kingdom, no one will need to steal compassion. We will give it freely." The hall erupted in approval. Not everyone agreed, but enough did. The new empire was being born. After the ceremony, King Kael'tir made Daehyun a final offer. "Stay with me. Be my advisor. Help me build this better world." Daehyun was tempted, but he had been in service for over 20 years. He was tired, and something called him home. Something he had left unfinished. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "you don't need me anymore. You understand humans now, perhaps better than some humans understand themselves." "Where will you go?" the king asked, though he already knew. "Earth. I have a grave to visit. People I never properly said goodbye to. Maybe I'll teach. Tell young people that it's possible to make a difference even when you're not the strongest or smartest." The king understood. He granted Daehyun a generous pension, a personal ship, and one final gift. A seedling from the royal garden. A Memoria fruit tree that should have been impossible to grow outside the palace. But this one had been specially cultivated to survive Earth's atmosphere. "Plant it somewhere meaningful," the king said. "Let it remind people that compassion, once planted, grows beyond all expectations." Daehyun returned to Earth, to the small cemetery where his daughter Soyeon and wife Yoonji were buried. The place was overgrown and forgotten by a world that had moved on to new concerns. He planted the Memoria tree between their graves. With Valoran nutrients, it took root immediately. Its branches glowed softly in the evening light, the only one of its kind on the entire planet. Daehyun knelt between the graves and told them everything. He told them about the crying prince and the stolen fruit. He told them about the empire that changed and the war that was won with human cleverness. He told them how their memory had given him courage when he needed it most. "I couldn't save you," he whispered, tears running down his weathered face. "But maybe in your names I helped save some others. Maybe that counts for something." With his pension, Daehyun opened a small school in the lower city where he had once lived. He taught children about the galaxy, about different species, about how one act of kindness could change everything. Hana joined him, tired of engineering and wanting to teach the next generation. Jiwon eventually retired from politics and came to help, bringing medical knowledge to a community that desperately needed it. On the first day of classes, a young girl raised her hand. "Mr. Daehyun, why did the aliens let humans become important?" Daehyun smiled at the question. "They didn't let us. We showed them who we always were. Sometimes the galaxy doesn't need the strongest or the smartest. Sometimes it just needs someone willing to care." Years passed. The Valoran-Human Alliance became a model for cooperation across the galaxy. 3 more species joined as equal partners rather than subjects. The empire that had once ruled through dominance now led through example. King Kael'tir ruled for 2 centuries, remembered as the compassionate king.